Hey everybody, David Gristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today we have a returning guest and a returning educator, lecturer, because he talked at our summit as well. It's Ryan Lazanis. He is the founder of Future Firm, and it's really all about helping accountants fast track the growth of a modern, scalable firm that improves their lifestyle. I've mentioned this a million times. For me, Ryan's newsletter is a must read in the industry. Subscribe to one newsletter outside of Jetpack Workflow, Future Firm has to be it, in my opinion. Before that, Ryan built and sold a successful firm, and we just love hearing his insights today. We're really going to unpack some interesting trends around emerging business models and the future of accounting. But first, Ryan, welcome back to the show.
David, always a pleasure, and big fan of what you guys are doing at Jetpack Workflow as well.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Is this the second time, the third time?
Second time, but we got to make it a monthly thing.
I could very easily do that. I'm a systems person, you're a systems person. If I don't have to think about it and we just know every month it's happening, I'm on board. So we'll talk about that maybe after the show ends. But hey, we gave a little teaser at the beginning. You put up this amazing blog post a while back, earlier this year, talking about the future of accounting, talking about emerging business models. And, as we're coming out of the pandemic, as we're reopening, I think you're going to see a massive acceleration in a lot of these business models. So I think our listeners are going to be really excited to hear some of these. But if it's okay with you, I'd love to just start diving in, riffing on what you see as some really interesting new opportunities for accounting firms.
Yeah, so I released a blog post a couple of months back already called Future of Accounting, your 2021 guide or something like that. And the article is designed to provide insight into how the accounting firm and the accounting industry is changing, and also provide some actionable, helpful tips to help better prepare yourself. And one of the parts of that blog post was talking about that there's the future of accounting, or the future of accounting firm is going to be dealing with emerging business models that are gaining in popularity. And there's a few business models that I touched on in the article. And, I think what's interesting is that, if you looked, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the way that people bought accounting services was all the same. You would go to your local accounting firm, you'd buy a tax return, you'd buy bookkeeping, you'd have them do the work, and that was it. But now, with the world so heavily digitized and everyone just hyper connected all the time, consumers have more options than ever before to get their accounting done. So as an example in the article, I say there's marketplace type platforms that are available. You look at QuickBooks Live, they were a software company. They had a huge user base. And now what they're doing is they're just, pairing buyers and sellers together in a marketplace type environment. So that gives the consumer an additional choice. And then you have different types of microservice models. Like, not everybody wants to sign up for an accountant on a recurring basis. People might just need a thing here or a thing there. And you're seeing, legal services are certainly going in this direction. There's a company called Good Lawyer where, you can just have a page of a contract reviewed for $25, just like a super narrow microservice. And I think we're going to start to see that hit the accounting space. Like, how could we narrow down the services into something a little bit like more micro? But the model that I'm really, really, really interested in right now is the online learning, the self-directed, self-paced online education space, because that's just booming right now. And a little bit of a backstory, so I had run an online accounting firm. I started it in 2013. I sold it in 2018. Really based on the value-based subscription pricing model. When I started Future Firm, which is my current venture, which is designed to work with accountants to help them quickly grow a modern, scalable accounting firm that they love working in. From the get-go, I knew I wanted a model that was a lot more scalable than a professional services model. I think I had done a good job scaling Zen Accounting, my past accounting firm. And I think I had standardized that model quite well, but there's only so much you can do to scale a professional services model. So when I started Future Firm, I was like, you know what? I want to go into the online education space. I want to release online courses. And as I got deeper and deeper into that, I realized that I can um, uh, leverage my time very well by creating online courses to help educate accountants to create a scalable firm and pair it with group coaching, so heavily leveraged coaching. And as I started developing this model, I said, well, wait a second, this is an absolutely excellent idea for accounting firms. And I started seeing a lot of accounting firms and bookkeeping firms starting to release this kind of model where, like, if you think about it, there's a lot of firms out there that are grossly, I'm going on a few tangents here, David, so you can cut me off at any point, but there's a lot of firms that are grossly undercharging for their services. And they're trying to get clients in the door and they're charging a couple $100 a month and they're making thin margins and they're really driving themselves into the ground to service these clients. But for that same amount of money, $150 a month, $200 a month, you could roll out a much more heavily leveraged model. And you're seeing a lot of smart firms do this at the moment where, again, $150 a month, they'll give you the apps, whether it's QBO, whether it's Zero. They'll give you courses on how you can handle your bookkeeping and your accounting yourself. So a do-it-yourself model. So more kind of playing in the online education space. And then they'll have a group call once a month, once a quarter, where people that are stuck could ask their questions to a professional. So now you're not servicing one-to-one, you're servicing one-to-many. And even though maybe you're charging a lower ticket price, $150 a month, it's almost all margin because once you've developed the courses and the curriculum to train people how to do it themselves, there's not much service that's required. And there's none of those crazy deadlines at the end of the day that you have to keep banging your head against. So if I was running a firm today, like this is what I'm really excited about. If I was running a firm today, I would 100% without a doubt be launching this model because there's a demand for it. It's a different way for a consumer to get their work done. It's not for every kind of client, but there, most businesses, most small businesses out there are very small in nature, and they might not be able to afford $1,000 a month. And you don't, as the firm, you don't want to charge 200, $250 a month and handle someone's bookkeeping. It's just too labor intensive for the margin required. So again, I'm going in a few tangents here, but I'm really excited about some of the emerging business models. And the one I'm particularly excited about is the online course and that membership type model.
Cool. Yeah, I think you set the stage really well. I got to ask this question, especially because this is, I think, your ecosystem. You think Xero is ever going to have a services competitor to what Intuit and QuickBooks did? Do you think they're ever going to have a marketplace where they're pairing up people and sending customers emails saying like, hey, don't you need a bookkeeper?
I don't think so. I don't think that's their game, but you never know. And I don't know how well it's even working on the Intuit side of things. I don't hear a ton of noise with QuickBooks Live, truthfully. So I'm not too sure how well that marketplace model is actually working out right now. I do know it exists, and there's people that want to get into the space. But ultimately, it's just another option for consumers. So there's more options than ever before.
Yeah, and I know when Intuit did that, then they came out and said, look, the majority of people that are using our platform don't even have an accountant or bookkeeper, and this is a way for us to at least get them into the world of accounting, and maybe they'll level up into your firm's not going anywhere type of thing. And so maybe that has played out. But I think they clearly did that service as a way to increase logo and revenue retention for their consumer business, for their small business, SMB business, because now they're doing loans. Like, they need to have these small businesses in their ecosystem as long as humanly possible for their product suite to really pan itself out, for their stock price to grow.
I think it makes sense for them. I have a feeling it will probably work out, but I just don't have much visibility into how well it's doing.
Yeah, agreed. I when they launched, I heard a million things about it, and then I really haven't heard anything since. But I like how you mentioned, it's like you have the marketplace that increases choice. I think it also reduces the friction to finding somebody, working with somebody, so you don't have to vet them out one by one. You have this microservice model, which is going to make things cheaper. You're going to say, I want that for $20, this for $100, this for 20, whatever it is. And then you have the online learning platform, which is kind of like going downstream, which you never, ever, ever hear about. Everybody says go upstream, charge more, add services. More services is more complex, it's more headcount, it's more hiring, it's more headaches. You're saying go downstream, open up the kimono, and create a monthly group of Pittsburgh businesses or HVAC businesses that you're meeting with monthly, and you're giving them, here's how to become the CFO of your business, or here's how to become financially savvy with your HVAC business or something like that.
I think it could work either way, actually, David. I think you can go downstream, but I also think you can go upstream. And I've also often talked about the power of 3-tiered pricing, 3 options pricing, providing a gold, silver, bronze. And I think if you go upstream, you can attach that just to your gold or your platinum plan and make it almost like a VIP, where you're giving exclusive content within a platform. Because these types of platforms now, where you can deliver online courses and different types of exclusive content, they're much easier to get set up and running these days. And I think the value of that. So, when I launched my membership, it's an online coaching membership called Future Firm Accelerate. There's 3 things that I include in it. There's one is my playbook, which is everything I know about how to scale a firm in precise step-by-step detail. So that's the online course end of things. There's a coaching component, which is group coaching, which is an Ask Me Anything call once a month, where anyone who's stuck on any of the material, I'm there to pitch in. And I just finished an Ask Me Anything call a couple hours ago. And I'm just answering questions and providing guidance where people are stuck. So heavily leveraged. And there is a community. And the community is the most valuable part, I think, of all of this, because now I'm getting, we have 200 modern, forward-thinking entrepreneurial accountants all getting together, discussing, sharing best practices. Now, imagine you did that, you're a firm, and you did that with your clients. Like that's an event. Like there's no firm that is getting clients together in a community to, to share what's working, to share what's not working, to go over challenges. So I think you could offer that kind of model in a firm as a VIP tier in your gold or platinum tier, and charge more for that. Or you can go downstream and capture the market that you don't want to service for $200 a month.
Where do you recommend starting? Downstream or upstream, or depending on your style, personality, interest, and client skill set?
So that's a very good question. Now, I think the downstream model only works if you have an audience. So, because you have to sell a lot of that stuff. If you're doing $100 per month type model, you need some volume, and then you need an audience, right? So you have to have an audience in place so that you can roll it out to them. Otherwise, you might sell one here, one there. And you're putting a lot of work to get this off the ground. Once it's off the ground, it's kind of you're in maintenance mode. The upstream model could work very well because you can charge a premium for that kind of feature in your plans, and you don't need a massive audience. It's just an upsell to your existing customer base, and I think it will create a stickier relationship with your customer base as well.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to somebody that hasn't curated their client community like this before? I think there's probably a lot of nervousness about, am I the right person? I'm not extroverted enough. Like, do I need to be really entertaining on these AMAs?
Yeah.
I like that it does force you to productize and templatize your firm. So it does, even if you just went through this process, you will get your stuff together a lot faster. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what would you say to somebody that's just I don't know, a little bit nervous about being the community manager, client connector, relationship person?
It's a good question. I mean, I think if I could do it, anyone can do it, because I'm like the number one introvert, and I'm not a natural speaker. Getting in front of a crowd, it's not really my cup of tea at all, truthfully. So if I can do it, I think anyone can do it, really. And It comes down to modeling. I mean, there could be other people in the firm that handle that aspect of things. You know, if you don't want to do a group Ask Me Anything call, there's other people that can do that. It doesn't necessarily need to be you. Or there's other ways that you can model it. I mean, it's about, I think the interesting thing about this model is that we're right at the beginning. I'm only just starting to see some firms getting into it now. People are starting to figure out how to make it work. And if you use a little bit of creativity, you can make it your own. And ultimately, all we want to do is just make sure the client is well serviced. That's all we want to do. And I think clients at the lower end of the spectrum, more downstream, they're having a hard time getting properly serviced, because at a certain price point, you're just not going to get a quality service. You know, if you're $150 a month or $200 a month, you're most probably not getting a quality service. So I think you can deliver a very high quality service to these people if you put together a nice course walking through how they can do things themselves, and give them a little bit of support during the year, and encircle them with a community of people that are in the same position as them. And they'll be a lot better off with that than with the alternative, I think. So ultimately, we just want to create something that's going to help improve our clients' lives.
What do you think is the revenue potential? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, I do think there's a massive leveraged play here, because you will have to productize your firm to create this course. You're going to have to templatize it to create this course. You're going to build this community, which will answer some of the questions that you don't need to. So, I mean, I think that's amazing in and of itself. But if you were to, I guess it's so early, it's hard to say, like, well, these 25 firms did it, and they saw a 25% bump in revenue, and that's hyper profitable revenue. That's 85% margins, 90%. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, for info products, I guess you have to factor in your time, your AMAs, but outside of that, the cost of delivery is so minimal.
All profit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is the potential? If I'm a firm, I'm doing $1 million a year, I have hundreds of clients. I don't know. How should we think about modeling this opportunity out a little bit?
So I think there's two ways to think about it. The first way is, like, what I'm suggesting up until now is a membership type model, where it's a subscription basis, where they get access to a community, they get access to the Ask Me Anything calls, they get access to a library of videos for a fixed monthly price. That model hasn't been around long enough for, for me to say what kind of revenue potential is there. I know one firm that's just selling online courses. I think $1,500 a month. Guy focuses on real estate clients and gives them a tax course or some kind of tax foundations course, $1,500 a month. His target this year was to sell 500 of those. And I know he had a chunk of them, a big chunk of that sold. So that's a nice chunk of change there. The other interesting thing about this model, though, is it kind of, there's a lot of, at least in the space that I'm in, a lot of these cloud firms that I deal with, they work with a lot of startups.
Yeah.
And startups are, they don't have a lot of cash, but 1 out of 10 is gonna make it big, and they'll want to be, they'll need a lot more help down the road, right? And certainly, I had focused on startups at my firm as well, and all of these like networking events for startups that I was going to, you'd see all the big firms there, even though these startups couldn't afford anything, and all these big firms were taking them on board for ridiculously low prices, in the hopes that 1 or 2 of them will hit it.
Yeah.
So what you can do, like, the small firm can't take advantage of that, because they're not going to take like 8 out of those 10 clients at a loss. But here, that model, with that kind of online course or membership model, you're kind of warming up those leads to grow with you. So it's not just the revenue that will come from selling the membership or selling the online courses, but it's the revenue that might come from these clients once they're ready to graduate to the next program, to the next, like, full service tier.
Yeah, it's a huge mindset shift too, to instead of thinking delivering the services, to building the educational course. If somebody is listening now, their head's spinning, it sounds really exciting, but they've never created a course before. They never thought about how to structure their content in a methodical way to lead somebody to an end desired outcome. Like, what have you personally digested to help you think about how to launch a successful course from a student adoption perspective? Like how to break things down? How do you know what's the first module versus the second versus the third? Have you found anything valuable in that arena?
That's a really good question. And I think it kind of flowed from the blogging that I was doing, because all the blogging I'm doing is a lot of it is highly actionable. A lot of my content is to be very actionable, where I want to guide the user consuming that content to an outcome. So I try to just do it in a step-by-step in a fashion as possible. I think there's certain things that are easier to do in a step-by-step fashion than others. And I think in accounting, there's probably a lot of things that we could like, setting up your accounting system. I think, that's pretty easy to put a course together for. And that's probably, one of the first steps that needs to be done if someone's starting off. Setting up your apps. You don't have to be walking someone through how to set up the apps. You can put together, a 5-10 minute course on how to set up QBO, or how to set up Xero, or how to set up Receipt Bank or HubDoc. Integrating the apps. You could have a course for that. Connecting your bank accounts, your monthly bookkeeping close, how to handle your reconciliations. Like, I don't think this requires a whole lot of, you don't have to be like a skilled online course creator to be able to put that together. So I don't know if I'm specifically answering your question or not.
My takeaway is don't overthink it, put something together. And if you're missing something, that's what those AMA calls will give you, right? If you hear a question come up a lot, you get the base package together. You feel like this is what a typical client's going to need to manage their own books at the startup level, to make sure that they're not getting themselves in trouble, and they have some visibility on their runway if you're, for startups and things like that. And then through your AMAs, which, it could be 3 people, it could be 12 people, it could be 50 people. I don't think it really matters, but they're going to ask you questions. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you know what? I will make a template for something, or you know what? I'm actually going to make I'll tell you how I define COGS today, but I'll make a little module, or I'll make a little video on why we include certain things and how to factor that in for your startup.
It's
so I think there's a lot of like
process. It's almost a never-ending process. And what I'm doing with Future Firm Accelerate, because it takes a long time to create these courses, and you don't have to have it 100% finished from the outset. You could have, I'm releasing my stuff in phases. And for the phases that aren't released, I'm just over servicing in the community and being very active in the community. It's a forum. It's in the platform I'm using, it's a forum. And when people have questions in the community about some of the unfinished phases of my program, I'm just over servicing and being super active in the community. And eventually that will be built out, and then it will all be leveraged once again. So you don't have to have a 100% finished product. You just have to start with something, set the right expectations, and perhaps over service in some of the areas that are incomplete.
Yeah. And I think that just to riff on that a little bit, the premium options with some of these programs are, depending on your program and depending on who you are. I've seen, physical meetups, let's say you're based in Boston, but you have clients all over the country, and you say, hey, we're going to go to Miami for 2 days or 3 days. And we're going to do that, once a quarter or twice a year. And I'm going to bring some speakers in. Obviously those are much more expensive programs. But like you said, there's a VIP experience. Or if you do something for Pittsburgh-based businesses, you could do, a gathering together, now that we're all able to gather together again here at, sports stadium or somewhere cool. I don't know. So I think there's also, it's how you want to foster the community and the VIP experience you want to have. But I think you could probably play around and have a little bit of fun with it. But don't try to have the master plan from day one, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And another thing I'll say on this is, accounting firms have always been seeking a differentiation factor. This right now is an easy one. And I know when I started my firm in 2013, it was one of the earliest online firms in Canada. And, there was a little bit of luck involved there, but that was a very easy differentiation factor. And I was able to gain a big chunk of clients easily very early on because of that and gain a foothold. And, now that's not so much of a differentiation factor anymore. It's more the norm. So what is the next thing, the next trend that people go to jump on to help differentiate their firm? And I think this is one of those things.
Yeah, especially if you're going and your clientele is, call it nationally, or whether that's US or Canada. I mean, maybe it's international depending on the firm. I think it does build a really interesting pipeline for you, like you mentioned as well. Like, it's a great community, it's a great value add, but it's the most scalable way. And here's a random example. I didn't mention it before the show, but there's this crazy service. It's wonderful. I think it was designed by some landscapers. So these two brothers started a landscaping business. Obviously, we haven't figured out how to build robotic lawnmowers. You have to hire somebody. You have to get somebody there to mow the lawn. They added this thing of this kind of like, it's not coaching per se, but I think they just rethought their business model in a very smart way of subscription lawn care service. So we'll ship you something every quarter throughout the year, and we'll have like this amazing green grass for you. And it's called Sunday or getsunday.com. And so they took something that was very service intensive. They started experimenting with something that's highly leverageable, shipping out random lawn care supplies. And all of a sudden, even if they were a localized company, they now launched this thing that was national bare minimum at scale. And I think that's the real opportunity for firms that maybe you got caught off guard by the pandemic a little bit in terms of your client exposure, in terms of like, yeah, you wanted to make the switch, you want to have more diversified client base. I think if you start exploring these models, you will shift to becoming a national firm almost by default, because your distribution model is going to change. Who you serve might evolve as well. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity to think about. Ryan, if somebody wants to read the blog post, check out your newsletter, check out your site, what is the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so I got a bunch of free helpful content on my website, futurefirm.co, my newsletter, futurefirm.co/newsletter, which has over 5,000 readers at the moment, firm owners that want to create a modern, scalable firm. And it's really just delivering helpful content and tips on a weekly basis. And for anyone that wants a little bit of help creating this kind of model, or wants help creating a more scalable accounting firm, you can head on over to check out details of my online coaching membership, futurefirmaccelerate.com.
Yeah, love it. And, probably 12 of those 5,000 subscribers work at Jetpack Workflow. Like I said, we're a big fan of the newsletter, so I highly encourage everybody to check it out. We're going to link everything up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. All the notes, the articles, the links you mentioned, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. If you love this interview, leave a review. And if you really loved it, share it with a fellow firm owner that needs to hear this type of content. Ryan, thanks again for coming on the show.
Much appreciated, David. Thanks a lot.